Hi, Tanya. Just wanted to quickly ask you what is happening this Thursday?
I'm glad you asked, Chris. This Thursday is International Domestic Workers Day, June 16th. And this is something that's celebrated every year. And it's a wonderful day for domestic workers everywhere to celebrate their accomplishments, but also to spread the word about this type of work and be able to support those that are not able to be recognized for the work that they're doing as domestic workers.
I think the day is needed as an opportunity to highlight the work of domestic workers around the world, not just here in the UK, but across the world. I think they are, in many cases, an unrepresented group that, in so many ways, like many groups of immigrants that come to different countries and travel, they often are overlooked by systems and the people that live in those countries. And I think it's a really great opportunity this Thursday to really highlight the achievements and this community of fantastic workers and their contribution that they do. So yeah, I mean, through our work at Tayo, and my own mother was a domestic worker, so I feel like I'm very aware of them and their contributions, but a lot of people aren't. So it's a really, really good opportunity for us to sort of spread the message about what they do.
Such a good point. I know that a lot of people are not familiar with the term domestic workers. And so, these can be people who are nannies or housekeepers, house managers, carers. And you mentioned a really great piece there about the contributions of domestic workers to society and to the households they support. Perhaps we can talk about some of these contributions that we see. So again, we can go back and forth, but what's one contribution that you would bring up that domestic workers are able to give the people they work for or the societies they work in?
Well, actually, yeah, the first thing I want to highlight actually is before we dig into the sort of the contribution they make to the people they work with, is actually the impact they make back home to their families. It's a very difficult decision to have to uproot your life and move abroad and potentially leave your family at home and maybe not see them for many years. And I think the first contribution that I would recognize is that the sacrifice that many domestic makers work to move abroad and through that support their families back home. And I know that's an important source of income and support and a massive contribution that they make to their families back home in the Philippines. First thing.
Yeah, and a lot of people don't see how big those contributions are, that they're able to be the breadwinners despite living a distance away from their families. They're able to support just the daily needs, allowance, school fees, hospital fees, any emergencies. So the financial obligations or responsibilities that they choose to carry, they're really significant, right? It's not just, sending a portion. Sometimes it's majority of their earnings. So I think that's a bit of an unseen contribution. I'm glad you brought that up.
Absolutely. And of course, you've worked extensively with lots of people from the community. I mean, what sorts of contributions have you seen, or some of the stories that you've heard from that community?
I think the first one that comes up is being able to recognize how they support the household that employs them. Because I think in our communities, we share a lot about, on this side, those that are domestic workers who are Filipinos, we always see that, yeah, they're remitting money, they're sending money. So the other side that perhaps other people don't recognize is that in a city like London, where we live, there's a lot of households that employ nannies, housekeepers and carers who either work part-time or full-time with them. And I think a contribution I'd like to highlight is that when they do this, when you're able to bring a nanny in to take care of your kids, then both parents can be in full employment or part employment, or that can help, open up opportunities to do other things with your time and have the support you need, the peace of mind that you need, that your children are being cared for or your loved ones are being cared for, or that you can come home to a house that is clean and comfortable. I think those things might be, depending on your own lifestyle and your access to these services, they can be taken for granted that somebody has really put a lot of care into caring for your home and caring for the people that you love. And so I think that's such a remarkable contribution, because we know of people who have had nannies who've been with their families for, the whole childhood to teenage years of their kids. And that's really allowed the household to thrive, not just, have things clean and tidy, but for, the family to have a lot of together time, the parents to be able to choose to do work or be productive in different ways. And I think that's an element of contribution that maybe is understood, but isn't really highlighted, to say that because I'm able to employ this housekeeper, I've been given freedom to, work full time or go back to work sooner, and to come home and feel relaxed and rested and have that mental calm when you come into your space. I think it's a big deal when people are able to have that person who's trusted come into their home and be a part of their household as a domestic worker. That can be such a significant piece of your home puzzle and your home experience.
Absolutely. And I think it's a really interesting point, because quite often there's work that happens informally in any sort of country economy that is undervalued. Things like childcare, or social care. And quite often those sorts of things happen informally. There's very little recognition of the contribution that people make to look after sick people, to look after young people. And I think that's true also of domestic workers. A lot of them do have quite significant responsibility when they come into these households. It's not just necessarily about maintaining the cleanliness of the household. It's also, raising kids, ensuring that the people have a certain quality of life in those households, if, especially if they're sick or they need looking after. And that sort of work by domestic workers as well is very difficult to measure and is not necessarily recognized at a wider level. So I think that's another really important contribution that domestic workers make.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's just, when I think about the sacrifices they make, to help to work and support another family, to help them raise their kids or be a part of that household, back to what you said in the beginning, that they also have their own families that they have had to make the sacrifice of being separated from, because of lack of employment opportunities in their home countries or their country of origin. And there's so many layers, I think, to being a domestic worker, and it's very different, I suppose, from other jobs that have a bit more social protection or have many more legal structures and policies surrounding their work. I think something that is that a lot of domestic workers are fighting for, particularly the ones that we know here in the UK through the Voice of Domestic Workers, they're really fighting for their rights, for them to be recognized, for their work to be recognized. And it's inspiring. It's inspiring to see, people coming from that lived experience to be talking about their experience beyond the homes they work in, to try to really get policy to be changed and for people to recognize the work that they do. So, and we definitely recognize that it's such an important part, and that the work that they do has a lot of significance and importance in society.
Absolutely. So Tanya, how are you planning on celebrating International Domestic Workers Day this year?
Well, we're really excited because we've got such a thriving community in our Team Tayo Filipino Domestic Workers group. So for Tayo, a lot of our celebrations are just to have conversations, have time to connect with the domestic workers that we know, and to really recognize the work that we're doing. So just like this conversation, actually having it with our domestic worker community and talk to them and cheer them on, and, you know, really start to continue to understand the things, the challenges that they're facing. And so our Filipino domestic workers group at Team Tayo is all about supporting domestic workers to be their best selves. And we focus on these 3 well-being streams. And so we're just excited that we are celebrating with domestic workers. So going beyond sort of just posting things about the work of domestic workers, actually spending time with the men and women we know who are domestic workers and really honoring them through the spaces that we share with them. So if you're a domestic worker and you're not familiar with our Team Tayo Facebook group, we have a Facebook group that's just for Filipino domestic workers, where we support your mental well-being, your physical well-being, and your financial well-being, with a lot of learning programs that happen within the Facebook group. So that's one thing we're doing. We're doing a few gatherings and events within our Facebook group. So if you're a domestic worker and you're not part of it, you want to join, I would encourage you to do that. We're also supporting some other things that are happening with others. So personally, I've been working with the Voice of Domestic Workers, and they're having a picnic on Thursday alongside other domestic worker organizations. So I'm excited to be in an in-person gathering and just to celebrate their work and amplify the work that they're doing here in the UK. So I think for me, it's a lot of spending time with domestic workers and just being somebody that can say, yes, you are doing really good work, and it's recognizing what they're doing and celebrating that and sharing that with others.
Fantastic. And will there be lots of Filipino food there at the picnic?
I believe there will be quite a bit of Filipino food, as well as vegan options for other things. But you can go to their the Voice of Domestic Workers website to see a bit more about what's happening there. What about you, Chris? I know you've asked me about this Domestic Workers Day. Is there something that you're excited about, or a memory that comes to mind when you think about celebrating domestic workers? You've had a number of interactions online and in person with our community. Does anything strike you as a really wonderful memory, or something that, you know, I guess for people that are not familiar with domestic workers or don't have a lot of interactions, what makes you excited about celebrating with them or celebrating them this week?
I think one thing that I feel very privileged to have found out about and have had access to are all the stories, actually, from domestic workers that I've met over the last year and a half. Hearing some of the stories and challenges that they faced, again, because they don't necessarily have access to the support that other groups would have. And of course, moving to a foreign country itself is a huge undertaking, and it can be a very difficult adjustment. And hearing some of the stories, the challenges, the injustices faced by some of the domestic workers, I feel very privileged that they've shared that with me. And so I'm looking forward to celebrating this group, because I feel those stories aren't heard enough, and they really are an inspiring and resilient community of people. In terms of fun memories, in terms of our sort of little group in Tayo, it's been great to get to know them and to share some great karaoke and dance-off moments with them in the park. Yeah. I've never met a group of people that's been so fun-loving, so open, and so inviting. And it's been a privilege to share those really fun moments together. And while we are all learning together and exploring different themes around mental well-being, financial and physical well-being, it's also been great just to sort of let our guards down and just have fun, and remember that we are, you know, without the fun, what are we doing?
Yeah.
So yeah, and yeah, I mean that will always be a memory that I take away. How fun loving this group are,
Mm.
especially with
Mm.
around karaoke.
So true. So true.